Can Zhen Huan, blessed with both beauty and talent, truly outshine all in the imperial harem and enjoy everlasting favor? Xiao Yunzi bowed deeply and said, I remembered something. Please allow me to step away for a moment. I nodded in permission and told Jinxi and Xiao Lianzi to stand up. I instructed Huan Bai, dump it all into the respect bucket. Huan Bai hurried off and I asked, no one saw you dumping the medicine, right? No, I dumped it all into the respect bucket in the back hall. No one saw. Xiao Yunzi quickly returned holding a purple clay medicine pot and a spoon saying, I thought if no one personally tampered with the medicine, then they must have tampered with these items. I nodded. You're not completely foolish. I took the spoon and examined it closely, finding nothing amiss. Then I took the medicine pot to examine. It was a Yixing purple clay pot, dark purple all over, shaped like a watermelon, with Wei Zhuang's verses carved in cursive on the surface, very exquisite. I opened the lid and looked inside against the sunlight, but found nothing unusual. Just as I was about to reprimand Xiao Yunzi for his folly and was about to speak, I suddenly smelled a very faint sour scent on my fingers holding the pot lid. I immediately examined the lid more closely and noticed its color was slightly lighter than the body of the pot, something that wouldn't be noticed without careful examination. I handed the lid to Jinxi. You've been in the palace for a long time, see what you make of this. Jinxi examined the lid closely and then said, this pot lid has been boiled in water with the medicine. The lid absorbed the medicated water, which is why its color changed. Seeing my usual expression, she continued, as long as the medicine boils and touches the lid, the medicine will mix into the young master's medicine. After a long moment I scoffed coldly and said, such meticulous effort, no wonder we couldn't find the person who tampered with the medicine. They had prepared everything in advance. I asked Jinxi, who usually keeps these items? Pear was in charge before, but now the new maid Hua Sui is managing them. I hummed in acknowledgement and said to Xiao Yunzi, when you took out the medicine pot, did Hua Sui see you? She did not. Put the medicine pot back where it was, don't raise any suspicions. Then go find out about Hua Sui's background, which palace she served in before, and which master she attended to. Xiao Yunzi hurriedly agreed and dashed off. 2 hours later, Xiao Yunzi came back to report that Hua Sui was originally a maid by the side of the demoted Yu Gangyi. When Yu Madam was demoted to a commoner, many of her maids were dismissed, and Hua Sui was among those who were sent away, later being assigned to my palace. Lu Zhu said, Miss, it looks like that girl is seeking revenge for her former master. What a loyal and reminiscing servant, I instructed Huan Bai. Go to the kitchen and fetch some hot coals, the kind that are glowing red, and place them in the room. Without turning my head I said to Xiao Lianzi, call Hua Sui here, tell her I have something to ask her. If she hesitates even slightly, bring her here by force. I coldly added, let me personally interrogate this loyal and faithful servant. Shortly after, Hua Sui followed Xiao Lianzi into the room, moving slowly. Lu Zhu scolded, the young master has questions for you. Why are you dawdling as if someone's going to eat you? Seeing this, Hua Sui hurriedly walked faster and knelt before me, too frightened to lift her head. I suppressed my anger and said with a smile, don't be afraid, I just have a few questions for you. Hua Sui kept her head down and said, young master, please ask. I will answer whatever I know. I spoke pleasantly, it's nothing serious. Aunt Jinxi mentioned you're doing a good job, managing everything well. I'm pleased and was thinking of rewarding you, so others know I'm clear about rewards and punishments, encouraging them to be more diligent. Hua Sui's face lit up with joy as she looked up and said, thank you for the reward, young master. But it's my duty. Indeed, you've performed exceptionally well among the new maids, I said, watching her face brighten with uncontrollable joy, then deliberately paused before adding, which palace did you serve in before? Your former master was really willing to let you go. Her expression changed slightly after hearing the rest of my question, and she bowed her head saying, I'm but a clumsy maid, never worthy of serving any notable masters before. Serving in the Wani Palace now is a blessing I've earned in many lifetimes. I moved closer to her side, extending my finger clad in a gold and enamel armor ring, gently tracing her face. The cold, sharp tip of the armor caused her body to tremble involuntarily. I didn't apply much force, leaving only a faint red mark on her cheek. I chuckled lightly. Being demoted to a commoner doesn't make you Madam a notable master, but she must have granted you considerable favor, otherwise, how would you dare commit such a capital offense in my palace? Hua Sui lay prostrate on the ground, her voice trembling. I did serve you gungi before, but I truly don't understand what the young master is talking about. My voice turned suddenly cold and stern. Do you really not understand what I'm saying? Then how do you explain the medicine pot lid? Faced with my question about the lid, Hua Sui was so frightened that her face turned pale, and she dared not move. After a long while she started crying and said, I truly don't know. I am loyal to you, my young master. I hope you can see the truth. I glanced at her and said coldly, Fine, I'll assume I've wronged you. Since you claim to be loyal to me, I'll give you a chance to prove your loyalty. I called Lu Zhu. Bring the coals here. Lu Zhu used tongs to place a few hot coals into a basin on the ground. I softly said, You have served you gungi before, so I have to be extra cautious. If you are truly loyal to me, then holding these coals in your hand will prove your innocence and loyalty, and I will treat you well in the future. Hua Sui turned deathly pale, her whole body stiffening like a statue, and Lu Zhu looked at her with disgust. Well, aren't you going to do it? The room was silent. The coals in the basin glowed red and emitted wisps of heat. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound, and a few sparks flew out, startling Hua Sui and causing her to tremble violently. The warm sunlight of late spring afternoon filtered through the window paper, making her look as lifeless as a corpse. I watched her silently with a smile, as Hua Sui shivered on the ground, inching closer to the basin of coals. No one spoke, all eyes were on her. I knew Hua Sui was the culprit, but she was just following orders. I needed her to reveal the mastermind behind her actions. I said slowly with a smile, You're afraid, aren't you? It seems your loyalty to me is nothing but a lie. Hua Sui glanced at me fearfully, then looked around at everyone standing, knowing no one would save her. She sobbed quietly, slowly straightening her curled white index and thumb, hesitantly reaching for a smaller piece of coal. A tear fell on the hot coal, hissing and producing a thick plume of white smoke, making her retract her fingers immediately and cry even more. Finally, Hua Sui stretched out her fingers again, closed her eyes and pinched a piece of coal. As soon as her fingers touched the scorching coal, she screamed sharply and threw the coal far away, scattering ash and sparks everywhere. Hua Sui's fingers were a bloody burnt mess, giving off a faint smell of charred flesh. She ran up crying and hugged my legs, screaming for mercy. Lu Zhu and Huan Bai could not pull her away. I frowned and said, I thought you were braver than this. You dared to poison my medicine, but you don't have the courage to hold a piece of coal. Hua Sui cried and pleaded, Please spare me, my young master, I won't dare do it again. I said sternly, Then tell me everything truthfully. If there's any falsehood, I'll have you dragged out and beaten to death immediately, and no one will dare to question it. I was originally serving you gungi. Since she was punished and didn't need so many servants, I was dismissed. The day before I came to Tongli Palace, Yu Gungi called me over, gave me a lot of gold and silver, and forced me to promise to serve her. I was foolish at the time. Please forgive me, my young master, please forgive me, she said, crying and kowtowing again. My tone was icy. Just speak your truth. This is your chance to redeem yourself. If there's even a hint of deception, I won't spare you. Yu Gungi told me not to worry about anything else, just to make sure the medicine was added to the young master's soup and meals. On the night I entered Tongli Palace, following Yu Gungi's instructions, I found a small hole in the corner of the wall. Whenever Yu Gungi had orders or needed to send something in, someone would stuff a note through that hole in the wall, and I just had to follow the instructions. Jinsi, with a stoic face, asked, So the medicine was passed through that hole? And it was Yu Gungi who taught you to boil the lid in medicated water, this deceitful trick.
Hua Sui nodded tearfully in admission.
I looked up and sneered. You hear that? One thing after another, just waiting to see me dead. If we hadn't discovered this early, I might not even know how I died. It shows how naive we've been. Everyone knelt down in unison, heads bowed, too frightened to even breathe loudly. I said, Stand up. Learn from this mistake. Some of you are veterans in the palace, yet you've allowed someone to run wild without realizing it. Perhaps we've been too naive. I turned to Hua Sui. Are there any other accomplices in the palace? Terrified, Hua Sui knocked her head on the floor repeatedly. There are no more, no more. When does Yu Gengyi plan to pass you notes or medicine? Hua Sui hesitated slightly, prompting Lu Zhu to immediately shout. Xiao Lianzi, pry open her mouth and pour all the coal in. Xiao Lianzi responded and moved as if to force the coals into Hua Sui's mouth. Terrified and unable to cry out, Hua Sui rolled on the ground to avoid it, shouting, I'll talk, I'll talk. I then instructed Xiao Lianzi to let her go and said calmly, then speak clearly, word for word. Yu Gengyi would place the medicine in that small hole every 3 days, and I just needed to fetch it. Every 3 days. So, when exactly tonight are you supposed to fetch the medicine? Is there a secret signal? At the first night watch, when there are 2 cuckoo calls from outside the palace wall, that's the signal. I would then imitate the cuckoo call twice in response. Have you ever seen the person delivering the medicine? I haven't seen them due to the wall, but I know it's a man's hand, with a scar on the palm of his right hand. I motioned towards Hua Sui and instructed Xiao Lianzi, tie her up and take her to the storeroom, gag her mouth with cloth. Just say she was caught stealing my jade bracelet. Find 2 strong eunuchs to guard her, make sure she doesn't harm herself. If she escapes or dies, those guarding her will answer to me with their heads. Hua Sui looked at me with terror, but I glanced at her and said, Don't worry, I don't want your life. Xiao Lianzi efficiently handled her, stuffing her into the storeroom. I instructed Huan Bai to close the door and then told Jinxi, Tonight, you'll pretend to be Hua Sui and fetch the medicine. Turning to Xiao Yunzi, I spoke in a stern voice. Take Xiao Lianzi and a few reliable eunuchs with you. Tonight we'll set a trap. With everything arranged and everyone dismissed, Lu Zhu whispered to me, Now that we know Yu Gengyi is behind this, have you thought about how to deal with her? I gazed out at the setting sun, the garden's newly bloomed hibiscus flowers blazing like fire. Under the blood-red sunset, they seemed even more intensely red, almost painfully bright. The breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying a faint scent of flowers and a hint of impending heat. Yet, I felt a chilling coldness spread over me, and I couldn't help but lean on the window frame and sigh. Even if I spare others, they still won't spare me. Huan Bai bit her lip gently, her almond-shaped eyes widening. Will you continue to endure in silence? I played with the pear wood window frame's intricate peony patterns with my armored finger, making a soft tapping sound but remained silent. The evening breeze soothed the tense pores on my face as the sky gradually darkened, the first stars appearing faintly. I took a deep breath and clenched my fingers, saying, When the knife is already at my neck, I can either await death or fight back. How can I just endure? Lu Zhu held my hand, saying, As long as you've made up your mind, Huan Bai and I will protect you with our lives. I exhaled slowly and said, If I don't want to be the fish on the chopping block, I have no choice but to struggle with all my might. I understood that in the harem, those who are not favored must endure, and those who are favored must compete. Endurance and competition are the essences of a woman's life in the harem. Given the current situation, it seems I have no choice but to fight. Adjusting the gold hairpin that was about to fall from my head, I asked, Did the emperor summon anyone tonight? Who is attending to him? Lu Zhu replied, It's Empress Hua. I softly said, I see. Serve the meal. I need to be well fed to have the strength to deal with tonight's complications.
Follow us to avoid getting lost and enjoy endless exciting stories. For more content, please go to the Story Wall homepage to view more exciting novels.